Jake Morrison stared at the screens in front of him. His hands shook as he watched the massive ships appear in Earth's sky. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built, much bigger. "Captain, we're getting reports from all over the planet," said Lieutenant Amy Carter. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "These things are everywhere. London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow. They're blocking out the sun." Jake nodded. He had been a captain in Earth's space navy for 10 years. He had fought pirates and smugglers, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien ships looked like giant metal mountains floating in space. Each one was the size of a small city. "How many ships do we count?" Jake asked. "Over 300, sir. And more keep coming." Jake felt his stomach drop. Earth's entire fleet had maybe 50 ships, and their ships were tiny compared to these monsters. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded strange and cold. "People of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You have 1 hour to surrender all military forces. If you do not surrender, we will destroy your cities one by one." Jake looked around the bridge of his ship, the USS Liberty. His crew of 20 men and women stared back at him. They were all young, all brave, all completely outmatched. "Sir, what are our orders?" asked Sergeant Pete Collins, the ship's Marine commander. Before Jake could answer, Admiral Tony Rodriguez's voice came over the radio from Earth Command. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We will not surrender to these invaders. All units are to engage the enemy. Protect Earth at all costs." Jake felt proud and terrified at the same time. He knew they would probably all die, but they had to try. "You heard the Admiral?" Jake said to his crew. "Battle stations. Let's show these aliens what humans can do." The Liberty moved toward the nearest alien ship along with 49 other human vessels. The alien ship was so big it looked like they were flying toward a metal planet. Jake's weapons officer, Lieutenant Ryan Parker, spoke up. "Missiles locked on target, sir." "Fire everything we have," Jake ordered. The Liberty's missiles streaked toward the alien ship. So did missiles from all the other human ships. Jake watched hopefully as hundreds of weapons hit the alien vessel. Nothing happened. The alien ship didn't even slow down. The missiles exploded against some kind of invisible barrier around the ship. It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. Then the alien ship fired back. A beam of bright blue light shot out from the alien vessel. It hit the USS Boston, one of Jake's sister ships. The Boston simply disappeared. 1 second it was there. The next second it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just gone. "Dear God," whispered Amy Carter. More blue beams lashed out from the alien ships. The USS Chicago vanished. Then the USS Miami. Then the USS Denver. In less than 5 minutes, half of Earth's fleet was destroyed. "All ships, retreat." Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. "Fall back to defensive positions around Earth." But there was nowhere to run. The alien ships were everywhere. They surrounded Earth like a metal net down on the planet's surface. Dr. Lisa Brooks watched the battle from her laboratory window in Boston. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But she could see that humanity was losing badly. Alien landing ships began dropping from the massive vessels in orbit. They were smaller than the main ships, but still huge by human standards. Each one was the size of a football stadium. The first landing ship touched down in Central Park in New York City. Its doors opened, and the aliens came out. Lisa watched the news coverage on her computer. The aliens were tall, maybe 8 feet high. They wore shiny armor that looked like it was made of crystal. Their faces were hard to see behind their helmets, but they moved with cold, mechanical precision. The aliens carried weapons that shot the same blue beams as their ships. When they fired at buildings, the buildings simply melted away. When they fired at cars or trucks, those disappeared too. Human soldiers tried to fight back. Lisa watched as an army tank fired its main gun at one of the aliens. The shell bounced off the alien's armor like a rubber ball. The alien turned and pointed his weapon at the tank. Blue light flashed, and the tank was gone. More landing ships came down all over Earth. London, Paris, Berlin, Moscow, Beijing. Everywhere the aliens landed, human resistance crumbled in minutes. Jake Morrison managed to bring his ship back to Earth's orbital station. Only 12 human ships had survived the first battle. 12 out of 50. Captain, Amy Carter said quietly, "We're getting surrender messages from governments all over Earth. Australia just gave up. So did Canada and Mexico." Jake closed his eyes. In less than 6 hours, the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled was destroyed. The aliens had crushed Earth's defenses like they were stepping on ants. "Sir," Pete Collins said, "what do we do now?" Jake looked out at the alien ships surrounding Earth. There were hundreds of them, and more kept arriving. Each one carried thousands of alien soldiers. Earth had 7 billion people, but most of them were not soldiers. And even the soldiers couldn't fight enemies who could make tanks disappear with a single shot. "I don't know," Jake said honestly. "I just don't know." On the planet below, the President of the United States made the announcement that Jake and his crew had been dreading. "My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, after consulting with world leaders, I am announcing Earth's surrender to the Zephyrian Empire. Effective immediately, all military resistance will cease. We call upon all humans to cooperate with the occupying forces to avoid further loss of life." Jake felt something die inside him as he heard those words. Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the planet they had all sworn to protect, was now in alien hands. The invasion was over. The aliens had won. But as Jake would learn in the months and years to come, the war was just beginning. 3 years had passed since the Zephyrians took Earth. Jake Morrison no longer wore the uniform of a captain. Instead, he wore the gray clothes of a worker in the copper mines of Montana. His hands were rough and dirty. His back ached from carrying heavy loads all day. The aliens had put most humans to work in mines and factories. They needed Earth's metals and minerals for their warships. Humans were perfect for this job, the Zephyrians said. Humans were small enough to fit in tight spaces, and they could work in dangerous conditions that would hurt the aliens. Jake carried a bucket of copper ore up from the deep tunnels. Around him, hundreds of other humans did the same work. They moved slowly, like tired machines. The Zephyrian guards watched them with cold eyes. The guards were the same tall aliens in crystal armor that Jake remembered from the invasion. They carried the blue beam weapons that could make a person disappear in an instant. They rarely spoke to the humans, except to give orders. "Move faster," one guard said to an old man who was struggling with his bucket. "You are too slow." The old man tried to walk faster, but he stumbled and fell. The guard pointed his weapon at the man. "Wait," Jake said, stepping forward. "He's just tired. I'll help him." The guard looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Humans always help other humans. So weak, so stupid. But he lowered his weapon and walked away. Jake helped the old man to his feet. The man's name was Bob Turner, and he had been a teacher before the invasion. Now he was just another worker in the mines. "Thanks, Jake," Bob whispered. "I thought he was going to kill me." "Don't give up," Jake whispered back. "We're still here. We're still fighting." But Jake wasn't sure if that was true anymore. In 3 years of occupation, the resistance had achieved very little. The aliens were too strong, too smart, too advanced, far away. In what used to be Boston, Dr. Lisa Brooks worked in a secret laboratory under the city. The building above had been turned into a Zephyrian command center. But the aliens didn't know about the hidden rooms below. Lisa and her team of 5 other scientists studied pieces of alien technology. It was dangerous work. If the Zephyrians caught them, they would all be killed immediately. But Lisa believed that understanding the alien technology was humanity's only hope. "Look at this," said Dr. Karen White, holding up a small crystal device. "I think this is part of their communication system." Lisa examined the crystal under a microscope. It was beautiful, with patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched, but it was also completely unlike anything humans had ever made. "Their technology is based on quantum patterns," Lisa said. "It's like they think in math, and their machines think with them. That's why they're so much smarter than us," said another scientist, Dr. Frank Davis. "Their brains work like computers." But Lisa wasn't so sure. She had been watching the Zephyrian guards for 3 years. They were smart, yes, but they always did the same things in the same ways. They never changed their routines. They never seemed to have new ideas. "Maybe being like computers isn't always good," Lisa said quietly. In Chicago, Sergeant Pete Collins led a team of resistance fighters through the ruins of the city. The Zephyrians had destroyed most of the buildings during the invasion. What was left looked like a giant graveyard made of concrete and steel. Pete's team had 12 people. They were all that was left of the Chicago resistance cell. Once, there had been over 100 fighters in the city, but the aliens had found most of them. "Target is up ahead," whispered Amy Carter, who had joined the resistance after escaping from her destroyed ship. She pointed to a Zephyrian supply truck moving down what used to be Michigan Avenue. Pete nodded. They had been planning this attack for weeks. The truck carried food and medical supplies for the alien guards. If they could destroy it, the guards would be hungry and weak for a few days. The team moved into position. They had learned to be very quiet and very careful. The Zephyrians had sensors that could detect humans from far away, but the sensors looked for normal human behavior. If you moved like an animal, crawling on your belly and staying very still, sometimes the sensors missed you. Pete waited until the truck was in the perfect position. Then he threw a homemade bomb. It was made from chemicals stolen from a destroyed factory. It wasn't very powerful, but it was all they had. The bomb exploded against the side of the truck. The vehicle stopped, and 2 Zephyrian guards got out. They looked around with their glowing eyes, searching for the attackers. Pete's team fired their weapons. They were using old human guns that did almost no damage to Zephyrian armor, but they kept shooting anyway, because it was better than doing nothing. One guard pointed his blue beam weapon at a building where some of Pete's fighters were hiding. The beam cut through the concrete like it was made of paper. The building started to fall down. "Run!" Pete shouted. His team scattered in all directions. They had learned that staying together meant everyone would die. It was better to split up and hope some people would escape. Pete ran through the broken streets, jumping over piles of rubble. Behind him, he could hear the guards chasing. Their heavy footsteps echoed off the empty buildings. He ducked into a subway tunnel that had been destroyed during the invasion. It was dark and filled with dirty water, but it was a good place to hide. The Zephyrian sensors didn't work well underground. Pete waited in the darkness for 2 hours. Finally, he was sure the guards were gone. He made his way back to the resistance hideout, a basement under a destroyed hospital. Only 6 members of his team made it back. The others were dead or captured, and the supply truck was still working. Their attack had failed, just like all the others. "We can't keep doing this," said Amy Carter. Her face was dirty and tired. "We're not hurting them at all. We're just getting ourselves killed." Pete knew she was right. In 3 years, the resistance had destroyed maybe a dozen alien vehicles. The Zephyrians had thousands of vehicles. It was like trying to drain the ocean with a spoon. But what else could they do? Give up and work in the mines forever? Let the aliens turn Earth into their factory planet? "Maybe we need a different plan," Pete said. "Maybe we need to think like they do." "How do you mean?" Amy asked. "I don't know yet," Pete admitted, "but there has to be something, some weakness we haven't found. He thought about the guards they had fought today. They were strong and fast and smart, but they had also been predictable. They had searched for the humans in exactly the same pattern they always used. They never tried anything new or different. Maybe that was important. Maybe that was the key to everything. Across the world, in hidden bases and secret laboratories, other humans were having the same thought. The Zephyrians were powerful, but they were also limited in ways they didn't understand. Commander Susan Blake, working from a hidden bunker in Alaska, coordinated with resistance cells around the globe. She sent coded messages through old satellite networks that the aliens hadn't bothered to shut down. The messages were always the same: stay alive, keep learning, wait for the moment when everything would change. That moment was coming sooner than anyone expected. In her laboratory under Boston, Dr. Lisa Brooks was about to make a discovery that would turn the war upside down. But first, humanity had to survive long enough to use it. Dr. Lisa Brooks almost missed the most important discovery in human history. She was tired after working 18 hours straight in her hidden laboratory. Her eyes burned from staring at computer screens. She was about to go to sleep when she noticed something strange. The Zephyrian crystal she had been studying was glowing. It had never done that before. Lisa rubbed her eyes and looked again. Yes, it was definitely glowing with a soft blue light. Karen, she called to Dr. Karen White, who was working at another table. Come look at this. Karen walked over and stared at the crystal. That's weird. What did you do to it? Nothing, Lisa said. I was just thinking about the test results, and it started glowing. For the past month, Lisa had been studying brain scans of humans and the aliens had been doing experiments on human prisoners, trying to understand how human minds worked. Lisa had managed to steal some of their data. What she found was amazing. Human brains created patterns of electrical activity that were completely different from Zephyrian brains. Humans thought in chaotic, unpredictable ways. Zephyrians thought in perfect, mathematical patterns. Wait, Lisa said suddenly. I think I know what's happening. She put her hand near the crystal. It glowed brighter. When she moved her hand away, the light faded. It's reacting to my brain waves, Lisa whispered. Human thoughts are interfering with their technology. Karen's eyes went wide. Are you saying we can affect their equipment just by thinking? Maybe, Lisa said, but we need to test it. They spent the next week doing experiments. They discovered that when humans concentrated hard while standing near Zephyrian devices, the devices stopped working properly. The effect was small, but it was real. Lisa called Commander Susan Blake on their secret radio. Susan, I need you to send me more Zephyrian equipment. Any kind you can get. That's dangerous. Lisa, what's this about? I think I found something. Something that could change everything. A few days later, Pete Collins and Amy Carter brought Lisa a broken Zephyrian weapon they had recovered from a destroyed guard post. Lisa and her team worked on it for days. Finally, they had a breakthrough. Dr. Frank Davis figured out how to amplify the effect of human brainwaves. He built a device that could focus human thoughts like a laser beam. Let's test it, Lisa said. They put the broken alien weapon on a table and aimed their new device at it. Lisa concentrated as hard as she could, thinking chaotic, random thoughts. She pictured explosions and storms, and wild animals. She imagined herself screaming and running, and fighting. The alien weapon started smoking, then it caught fire, then it melted into a puddle of metal. Oh my God, whispered Karen. We did it. We actually did it. Lisa felt like crying with joy. For the first time in 3 years, humans had found a way to fight back against technology, but they needed to test it on a bigger scale. Lisa called Commander Blake again. We need to try this on a real target, a Zephyrian ship or vehicle. That's extremely dangerous, Susan said. If you get caught, we lose everything. If we don't try, we'll never know if it works, Lisa replied. Susan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll talk to Jake Morrison. He's been wanting to hit back at the aliens for years. Jake Morrison was now working in the Montana mines, but he was still a leader among the human workers. When Susan's message reached him, he felt hope for the first time since the invasion. He gathered his most trusted friends, Bob Turner, the old teacher, and 6 other workers who had been soldiers before the occupation. We have a chance to strike back, Jake told them quietly during their lunch break. But it's going to be very dangerous. More dangerous than living like slaves for the rest of our lives. Asked Bob. Jake smiled. That was the spirit that had made humans fight impossible odds throughout history. They planned their attack carefully. There was a Zephyrian patrol ship that flew over the mining area every day at the same time. It was a small ship, with only 2 guards inside. Lisa's team had built a portable version of their new weapon. It looked like a metal box with wires sticking out of it. Lisa called it a neural disruptor because it disrupted the ways brains worked. Jake and his team hid behind some large rocks near the mine entrance. They waited for the patrol ship to fly overhead. Here it comes, whispered Bob. The ship approached, flying low and slow. The Zephyrian guards inside were not worried about human attacks. Human weapons couldn't hurt their ship. Jake turned on the neural disruptor and pointed it at the ship. Lisa had taught him how to use it. He had to concentrate on chaotic thoughts while the machine amplified his brainwaves. Jake thought about the day his ship was destroyed during the invasion. He thought about watching his friends die. He thought about 3 years of slavery and humiliation. All of his anger and pain flowed through the neural disruptor. The Zephyrian ship started flying in circles. Then it began spinning wildly. The guards inside were probably confused and disoriented, unable to control their own minds or their ship. The ship crashed into the side of a mountain. There was a huge explosion that could be heard for miles. Jake and his team stared at the wreckage. In amazement, they had done it. They had actually shot down an alien ship, but their celebration was short-lived. More Zephyrian ships appeared in the sky within minutes. The aliens had detected the crash and were coming to investigate. Run, Jake shouted. His team scattered into the mine tunnels. They carried the neural disruptor with them, hiding it deep underground, where the Zephyrian sensors couldn't find it. The aliens searched for hours, but they found nothing. They couldn't understand what had happened to their patrol ship. Their technology told them it had simply crashed for no reason. Word of the successful attack spread through the resistance network. Hidden groups all over Earth began building their own neural disruptors using plans that Lisa's team shared through secret radio channels. In Chicago, Pete Collins used a neural disruptor to disable a Zephyrian truck. The guards inside became so confused they started shooting at each other. In London, a resistance cell used a new weapon to shut down an alien communication center. The Zephyrians inside ran around in panic, unable to understand what was happening to their equipment. In Tokyo, human fighters disabled 3 alien ships in one day. For the first time since the invasion, the Zephyrians were afraid. They didn't understand why their technology was failing. Their perfect mathematical minds couldn't comprehend the chaotic nature of human thought. The aliens began changing their patrol patterns. They sent out larger groups of guards. They increased security around their bases. But they still didn't understand what they were really fighting. They thought it was some new human weapon. They didn't realize that the weapon was the human mind itself. Commander Susan Blake coordinated resistance activities from her base in Alaska. She sent out orders to cell leaders around the world. This is our chance, she broadcast on the secret radio network. The aliens are confused and scared. We need to hit them hard before they figure out what's happening. Amy Carter, now one of Pete's top fighters in Chicago, had an idea. What if we could make a really big neural disruptor? Something that could affect an entire alien base. Lisa Brooks heard about Amy's idea and got excited. We could build something that size, but we'd need a lot of power, and we'd need people all over the city to operate it at the same time. How many people? Pete asked. Maybe 1,000. All concentrating together, all thinking chaotic thoughts at exactly the same moment. It was an ambitious plan, but for the first time in 3 years, humans had hope. They had found a way to turn their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. The Zephyrians thought that human chaos and unpredictability made humans inferior. They were about to learn that they were completely wrong. The Zephyrian Empire was angry. For 3 years, they had controlled Earth without any real problems. Now human rebels were destroying their ships and equipment all over the planet. The Empire's leaders decided to end the human problem once and for all. Admiral Tony Rodriguez watched from his hidden command post as hundreds of new alien ships filled Earth's sky. Intelligence reports said that ships were coming from all over the Zephyrian Empire. They planned to kill every human on Earth. This is it, Tony said to his staff. If we lose this battle, humanity is finished. Tony was no longer the admiral of Earth's navy. Earth didn't have a navy anymore. But the resistance fighters still called him admiral, and he still felt responsible for protecting his planet. The plan was massive and desperate. Lisa Brooks and her team had built the largest neural disruptor ever created. It was hidden in the ruins of New York City, connected to a power plant that Pete Collins' team had captured from the aliens. But the neural disruptor needed human minds to work. Thousands of human minds, all thinking chaotic thoughts at the same time. Commander Susan Blake had spent weeks organizing resistance cells all over the world. In London, Amy Carter led a team of 50 fighters to position around the city. In Tokyo, former soldiers prepared to coordinate with the main attack. In Moscow, Berlin, Paris, and dozens of other cities, humans got ready for the most important battle in their species' history. Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of Central Park with 200 other volunteers. This was where the first Zephyrian landing ship had touched down 3 years ago. Now, it would be where humanity made its last stand. Remember, Jake said to the group, when Lisa gives the signal, you need to think the most chaotic thoughts you can. Think about everything you hate about the aliens. Think about everything you've lost. Don't hold back. Above them, the Zephyrian fleet was enormous. Jake counted over 500 ships, more than had attacked Earth during the original invasion. Each ship was filled with alien soldiers who thought they were coming to exterminate some troublesome animals. The aliens had no idea what they were really facing. Dr. Lisa Brooks stood next to her giant neural disruptor in a basement under the ruins of Manhattan. The device was the size of a small building, with cables and antenna arrays spreading out 4 blocks underground. Power levels are good, reported Dr. Karen White. All connection points are active. Neural amplifiers are online, said Dr. Frank Davis. We're ready. Lisa took a deep breath. She opened a radio channel that connected her to resistance fighters all over Earth. This is Dr. Brooks. Today we take back our planet. Today we show these aliens that humans will never give up. On my signal, everyone think angry thoughts, think wild thoughts, think human thoughts. In orbit, the Zephyrian fleet began its final attack. Beams of blue energy lanced down from the sky, turning buildings into dust. The aliens planned to destroy every city on Earth, then hunt down any survivors. But something was wrong. In the lead ship, Zephyrian Admiral Vex-9 noticed that his navigation systems were acting strangely. The targeting computers kept losing their locks on human cities. Report, Vex-9 commanded his bridge crew. Unknown interference pattern, Admiral. Our quantum processors are experiencing random fluctuations. Vex-9 was confused. In 300 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered anything like this. Their technology was perfect. It didn't malfunction. Down on Earth, Lisa Brooks watched her instruments as thousands of humans began concentrating their thoughts. Neural pattern strength at 30%. Karen reported. Targeting priority coordinates, Lisa said into her radio. Focus on the lead ships. Think about destroying them. All over Earth, humans thought about fighting back. They thought about their anger, their hope, their desperate need for freedom. They thought chaotic, unpredictable, completely human thoughts. In his ship, Admiral Vex-9 suddenly felt dizzy. The walls around him seemed to shift and change. His perfect mathematical mind couldn't process what was happening. Admiral, our weapon systems are offline, reported a crew member. Navigation is down. Communications are failing. Other Zephyrian ships began reporting the same problems. Pilots found themselves unable to fly in straight lines. Gunners couldn't aim their weapons. Crews became confused and disoriented. Neural pattern strength at 60%, Karen announced. The effect was spreading. Human thoughts were interfering with Zephyrian technology across the entire fleet. Ships began colliding with each other as their pilots lost control. Jake Morrison watched from Central Park as alien ships started falling from the sky. Some exploded in midair. Others crashed into buildings or into the ocean. It was the most beautiful sight he had seen in 3 years. It's working, he shouted to his team. Keep thinking, don't stop. Pete Collins and his fighters had captured several Zephyrian vehicles during the confusion. The alien guards were stumbling around like drunk people, unable to coordinate their movements. Their armor still works, Pete said into his radio, but they can't think straight. Take them alive if you can. We need prisoners for information. For the first time in the war, humans were capturing Zephyrian soldiers instead of the other way around. Admiral Vex-9 tried to understand what was happening to his fleet. His species had conquered thousands of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Every other species thought in logical, predictable patterns. The Zephyrians could always anticipate what their enemies would do, but humans were different. Human thoughts jumped around randomly, from anger to fear to hope to love, often in the same second. The chaos of human consciousness was like a virus in the Zephyrian quantum systems. All ships, retreat to safe distance, Vex-9 ordered. But his communication systems weren't working properly. Only half his ships received the message. Neural pattern strength at 80%, Karen reported. Lisa felt the power of thousands of human minds flowing through her neural disruptor. It was like holding lightning in her hands. The device was amplifying human consciousness and broadcasting it across the planet. Ships continued to fall from the sky. Zephyrian ground forces that had been preparing to attack human cities suddenly found their equipment failing. Vehicles stopped working. Weapons wouldn't fire. Communication networks went silent. In space, Admiral Vex-9 made a desperate decision. If his fleet couldn't fight effectively, he would destroy the entire planet. Better to kill all the humans than let them spread their chaotic influence to other worlds. He gave the order to fire planet-killer weapons at Earth, but the weapons wouldn't work. The targeting systems were too confused to lock onto a planet-sized target. Some ships fired at random, missing Earth completely. Others fired at their own allies by mistake. Neural pattern strength at 100%, Karen announced. Lisa felt something incredible happening. The neural disruptor was no longer just broadcasting human thoughts. It was creating a feedback loop, amplifying and focusing the consciousness of every human on Earth. Every person in every resistance cell, every slave in every mine, every prisoner in every camp was connected in a single moment of shared determination. 7 billion human minds thinking one thought, freedom. The effect was overwhelming. Zephyrian ships didn't just malfunction, they shut down completely. Thousands of alien soldiers collapsed as their nervous systems overloaded. The rigid mathematical perfection of Zephyrian consciousness simply couldn't handle the wild creativity of human thought. Admiral Vex-9 felt his own mind fragmenting. For the first time in his life, he experienced doubt, confusion, fear. These were emotions that his species had eliminated long ago. Now, they flooded back, all at once, and he couldn't cope with them. He gave one final order. All ships, retreat, now, The Zephyrian fleet began to withdraw from Earth. Ships that could still function limped away into deep space. Those that couldn't were abandoned, their crews evacuating in escape pods. Jake Morrison stood in Central Park and watched the alien ships disappear into the distance. Around him, his team was cheering and crying and hugging each other. "We did it," he said, quietly. "We actually did it." But Lisa Brooks knew that this was just the beginning. In her laboratory, she was already making plans. "The neural disruptor works," she said to her team. "Now we need to build more of them. Bigger ones. We're going to take this technology to every world the Zephyrians have conquered." For the first time in 3 years, Earth was free. But more importantly, humanity had discovered something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Zephyrian Empire ruled through technological superiority and logical thinking. But they had never faced an enemy that could turn chaos itself into a weapon. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 2 years after Earth's liberation, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Liberty. It was not the same Liberty he had commanded during the invasion. That ship had been destroyed long ago. This new Liberty was built from captured Zephyrian technology and human engineering working together. The ship was approaching Kepler 442, a planet that had been under Zephyrian control for over 50 years. Intelligence reports said that 2 billion aliens lived there, along with enslaved populations from 6 different species. "Neural disruptor arrays are ready, Admiral," reported Captain Amy Carter, who now served as Jake's second in command. "All human crew members are in position." Jake nodded. The Liberation fleet had grown to over 300 ships, most of them captured from the Zephyrians and modified with neural disruptor technology. Each ship carried a crew of humans whose job was to think chaotic thoughts during battle. "Open a channel to all ships," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir. This is Admiral Morrison to all ships. Today we free another world from Zephyrian tyranny. Remember, we're not here to conquer, we're here to liberate. Show these people that freedom is possible." The Liberation fleet moved toward Kepler 442. As they approached, Zephyrian defense ships rose to meet them. There were over 100 alien vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than the human ships. But size and firepower didn't matter anymore. "Activate neural disruptors," Jake commanded. Across the fleet, thousands of humans began concentrating their thoughts. They thought about freedom, about hope, about the chaos and creativity that made them human. The neural disruptors amplified these thoughts and broadcast them toward the Zephyrian ships. The effect was immediate. Zephyrian pilots lost control of their vessels. Communication networks failed. Weapon systems shut down. Within minutes, the entire defense fleet was drifting helplessly in space. "Landing teams, begin your assault," Jake ordered. Pete Collins led the ground invasion with a force of 10,000 human Marines. They had learned to fight using captured Zephyrian equipment combined with neural disruptor weapons. The combination was devastating. On the planet's surface, the Zephyrian occupation forces tried to organize a defense, but their rigid command structure collapsed when their officers couldn't think clearly. Soldiers wandered around in confusion, unable to follow orders or coordinate with each other. The enslaved alien populations watched in amazement as their Zephyrian masters fell apart. Many of them had been slaves for their entire lives. They had never seen Zephyrians lose a battle. Dr. Lisa Brooks, now the Liberation Fleet's chief scientist, worked to shut down the planet's slave camps. She had perfected the neural disruptor technology over the past 2 years. Now she could target specific Zephyrian installations while leaving other species unharmed. "Camp 7 is liberated," she reported to Jake. "That's the last one. All slave Populations are free. Jake felt a deep satisfaction. 2 billion beings had just been freed from Zephyrian rule. It was the largest liberation in galactic history, but there was still work to do. Commander Susan Blake, now in charge of intelligence operations, had been tracking Zephyrian fleet movements across the galaxy. The Empire was trying to reorganize, but they were failing badly. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the Vega system," Susan said. "The local Zephyrian governor has surrendered without a fight. He's asking for human protection." Jake wasn't surprised. Word of humanity's neural disruptor technology had spread throughout the galaxy. Some Zephyrian commanders were choosing to surrender rather than face the chaos of human consciousness. "What about their homeworld?" Jake asked. "Zephyr Prime is in complete chaos," Susan reported. "Our intelligence network says there's civil war between different Zephyrian factions. Some want to negotiate with us, others want to fight to the end." The Zephyrian Empire was falling apart from within. For 300 years, they had maintained control through perfect unity of thought. Every Zephyrian thought the same way, wanted the same things, followed the same logical patterns. But exposure to human neural disruptors had changed that. Zephyrians who had been affected by human consciousness began experiencing emotions and ideas they had never felt before. Doubt, creativity, individuality, concepts that were foreign to their species. Some Zephyrians embraced these new feelings, others were terrified by them. The result was the first civil war in Zephyrian history. Tony Rodriguez, now in charge of diplomatic operations, was negotiating with surrendering Zephyrian worlds. Many of them were offering to join a new galactic alliance under human leadership. "They want protection from their own empire," Tony explained to Jake during a strategy meeting. "They've seen what happens when Zephyrians are exposed to human thought patterns. They're afraid their own government will eliminate them as contaminated." Jake found the situation both satisfying and troubling. Humanity had won the war, but victory was creating new problems. The galaxy was in chaos, with old alliances breaking down and new conflicts emerging. "We need to be careful," Jake said to his senior staff. "We didn't fight this war to become the new empire. We fought it for freedom," Amy Carter agreed. "Some of these surrendering worlds want us to rule them. They're used to being controlled by someone. They don't know how to be free." It was a problem humanity had never faced before. How do you teach freedom to species that had been slaves for centuries? Dr. Lisa Brooks had an idea. What if we use the neural disruptors differently? Instead of causing chaos, we could broadcast human concepts of freedom and independence. Show them what it feels like to think for themselves. It was a radical idea, using neural disruptor technology to spread ideas instead of causing confusion. But Jake thought it might work. They tested the concept on a small Zephyrian colony that had surrendered. Instead of chaotic thoughts, the human operators focused on memories of freedom, the feeling of making choices, of having hopes and dreams, of being an individual. The results were amazing. Within weeks, the Zephyrians on the colony began developing their own culture for the first time in their species' history. They started creating art, writing music, and forming personal relationships. Word of the experiment spread quickly. Soon, liberated worlds throughout the galaxy were requesting freedom broadcasts from human neural disruptor teams. But not all Zephyrians wanted to change. Admiral Ketsevan, leader of the remaining Zephyrian fleet, gathered his forces for one final assault on Earth. He commanded over 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. "The humans are a disease," he broadcast to his forces. "They must be eliminated before they spread their chaos to the entire galaxy." Jake Morrison met the Zephyrian fleet at the edge of the solar system with the full Liberation fleet. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, over 3,000 ships facing each other in the void between stars. "This ends today," Jake said to his crew. "One way or another." The battle began with the Zephyrians firing their most powerful weapons, Beams of energy that could destroy planets lanced across space. But the human ships dodged and weaved in patterns that no logical mind could predict. Then, the neural disruptors activated. 10,000 human minds focused on a single thought, the complete and total defeat of Zephyrian tyranny. The mental force was so powerful that it overwhelmed the alien fleet instantly. Admiral Ketsaven felt his perfect, logical mind shatter like glass. For the first time in his life, he experienced fear, doubt, and the terrible knowledge that he might be wrong about everything. His fleet fell apart around him. Some ships surrendered immediately, others simply shut down as their crews collapsed under the weight of unfamiliar emotions. A few tried to retreat, but their navigation systems had failed. The battle was over in less than an hour. Jake Morrison accepted Admiral Ketsaven's surrender in person. The Zephyrian commander was a broken being, no longer the perfect military machine he had once been. "I do not understand," Ketsaven said quietly. "How did you defeat us? We are superior to you in every way." "That was your mistake," Jake replied. "You thought superiority meant perfection. We learned that strength comes from chaos, creativity, and the courage to be different." With the destruction of the last Zephyrian fleet, the war was officially over. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries no longer existed. But Jake Morrison's work was not finished. Earth had become the center of a new galactic alliance, one based on freedom rather than conquest. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came to Earth to learn about human concepts of liberty and self-determination. The neural disruptor technology was shared freely with any species that wanted it, not as a weapon, but as a tool for spreading the ideas of freedom and individuality. Standing in his office, overlooking the rebuilt New York City, Jake reflected on how much had changed. 5 years ago, humanity had been a conquered species, facing extinction. Now they were the leaders of a free galaxy. But the most important change was not political or military. It was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that diversity of thought was stronger than unity of purpose, that chaos could be more powerful than order, and that the courage to be different was the most valuable thing any species could possess. Earth had been the underdog. Now the Empire didn't exist anymore, and the galaxy was a better place for it. Amy Carter joined Jake at the window. "Any regrets?" she asked. Jake thought about all the battles they had fought, all the friends they had lost, all the impossible odds they had overcome. "No," he said finally. "No regrets at all." Outside the window, ships from dozens of different worlds came and went, from Earth's orbital stations. Former slaves were now free citizens. Former enemies were now allies. The galaxy was chaotic and unpredictable and absolutely beautiful. It was perfectly human,